The father punishes his daughter by giving her to a slave, but what he did to her shocked everyone. A love story. During the slavery period in the United States, a storm raged across the Virginia sky that night in 1857. Inside the Whitmore mansion, screams echoed louder than the thunder. "You have dishonored me, Abigail! You have dishonored this family!" Colonel Thomas Whitmore raised his trembling hand, his face red with fury. His 19-year-old daughter stood before him, tears streaming down her pale face, but her chin held high in defiance. "Father, I only brought medicine to the sick slaves. They are human beings. They have souls. They feel pain like we do." Abigail clutched the Bible to her chest, the one her late mother had given her. The colonel gave a cruel laugh. "Alma, you've lost your mind, girl. And now all of society is talking about you. They say my daughter mixes with the blacks, treats them as equals." He spat the words like poison. "You refused to marry Senator Clayton's son because of these absurd ideas." Abigail took a deep breath. She knew that helping the slaves would anger her father, but she couldn't imagine the consequences. In recent weeks, she had brought food and taught some children to read Bible verses in secret in the barn. Her heart couldn't bear to see so much suffering. "The Bible says we should love our neighbor, Father. Christ made no distinction between—" "Silence!" his voice thundered. "You want equality. You want to live among them. Then you shall live." His eyes gleamed with a cruelty Abigail had never seen. "Tomorrow at dawn you will be given as a wife to one of my slaves. I have already chosen which one." The world revolved around Abigail. "Dad, you can't." "I can and I will. You will no longer bear the Whitmore surname. You will live in the slave quarters, work in the fields, and experience firsthand what you so vehemently defend." He approached, his voice low and venomous. "And I have chosen especially for you the worst of them, Josiah, a mute black man, branded with a hot iron, whom I almost killed for trying to escape. Let's see if your Christian love survives in his hands." Abigail fell to her knees, but did not plead. She raised her eyes to her father, and through her tears whispered, "May God have mercy on your soul, Father, and on mine as well." That was the last night Abigail Whitmore slept in her mahogany bed. Through the window, I watched the small flickering lights of the slave quarters in the distance. In one of them, a man she had never met waited, unaware that his life too was about to change forever. Dawn would bring not only punishment, but the beginning of something no one could have foreseen. The sun rose red over the cotton fields when they dragged Abigail out of the mansion. She was now wearing a simple dress of unbleached cotton, her bare feet on the cold earth. Her hands trembled, but she held her head high, the Bible still pressed against her chest. Overseer Walker, a brutal man with a whip always at hand, led her along the muddy paths to the slave quarters. Slaves stopped their work to watch, incredulous. The colonel's daughter, walking like one of them. "Don't look! Get back to work!" Walker was shouting, but the stares persisted, some with pity, others with suspicion, many with fear of what this meant. They stopped in front of an isolated cabin, smaller than the others, with a partially collapsed roof. Walker banged on the door with the handle of his whip. "Josiah, come out here!" The door creaked, and then Abigail saw him. Josiah was tall, with broad shoulders marked by deep scars. His face was expressive despite the forced silence, dark, intense eyes that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 untold stories. A scar ran across his throat, a cruel witness to the punishment that had left him mute. He stopped when he saw Abigail, confusion evident in her gaze. "This is your new wife by order of the colonel," Walker announced disdainfully. "The young lady has fallen from grace. Now she's yours, Josiah, his property just like you." He shoved Abigail forward. "And you, girl, any attempt to escape, any complaint, and you'll be whipped like any slave, understand?" Abigail nodded, unable to speak. Walker spat on the ground and left, his laughter echoing between the cabins. Silence. Josiah and Abigail stood still, separated by only 2 meters, but by an abyss of different worlds. She noticed how he kept his distance, how his fists were clenched, how he avoided looking directly at her. Finally, Abigail took a hesitant step. My name is Abigail. I know you didn't ask for this, neither did I. Her voice faltered. But we're stuck in this situation together. Josiah watched her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he gestured for her to enter the hut. The interior was dark and cold. A single straw cot, a broken table, an oil lamp. He pointed to the cot, and then to himself, pointing to the floor. Abigail understood. Are you going to sleep on the floor? He nodded, then pointed to her and the cot again, this time with more emphasis. Tears filled Abigail's eyes. In that simple gesture, there was more kindness than she had found in her own home in recent weeks. Thank you, she whispered. Josiah turned to leave, but she touched his arm lightly. He froze. Wait, can we at least try to talk, somehow? He looked at her, and in those eyes she saw something unexpected. Not anger, not desire, but a deep sadness and perhaps hope. The days turned into weeks. Life in the slave quarters was brutal in ways Abigail had never imagined. Her hands, once soft, bled in the cotton fields. Her back ached under the relentless sun. But what hurt her most was the loneliness. The other enslaved women avoided her, seeing her as a spy for the colonel. Only Josiah remained constant. Every morning he left a piece of bread beside her cot. At night he lit the lamp before arriving. When she collapsed from exhaustion, he would quietly appear with fresh water. He never spoke, he couldn't, but his actions said it all. One night Abigail was reading her Bible by the flickering light when Josiah entered. She noticed how his eyes fixed on the book with unusual intensity. You know how to read? He asked hesitantly. Josiah stood motionless. Then, slowly, he picked up a stick and began to write in the hard-packed earth. Trembling letters, but legible. Yes. Abigail's eyes widened. Oh, Josiah. She approached. How? When? He wrote further. My mother, before she was sold. I was 8 years old. And your father? Josiah's hand trembled. Shepherd. Free. They couldn't marry. I was born a slave. The story unfolded in the words written on the earth. Josiah's father was a freed black shepherd who had loved a slave. When they discovered this, the shepherd was expelled, and Josiah's mother was sold. Josiah grew up alone, keeping the secret of knowing how to read, a crime punishable by death. At 16, he tried to run away to find his mother. He was captured. The colonel ordered his tongue to be cut out as an example. But you can't talk at all? Abigail asked, horror and compassion in her voice. Josiah pointed to the scar on his throat and made a cutting gesture. Then he wrote, They cut here too. No sound comes out. Abigail covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Josiah, I'm so sorry. She held his hand before she could think. He didn't push it away. My father. He's a monster, Josiah quickly wrote. You are not like him. How do you know? You cry for us. You pray for us. I heard you. It was true. Every night Abigail prayed softly, asking for strength, forgiveness, and deliverance for all who were suffering. She didn't know that Josiah was listening to every word from the other side of the door. Josiah, she whispered, why are you being so kind to me? You're suffering. It's because of my family. He erased the earth and wrote with special care, Christ says to forgive. You taught me that, without knowing it. Abigail didn't understand until he pointed to the Bible. He wrote, I saw you teaching the children in the barn. I listened in secret. Everything connected. The passages she read, the stories of mercy and love, of a God who made no distinction between people. Josiah had absorbed it all, and now he was living what she had only preached. For the first time since she arrived, Abigail smiled genuinely. "So, we're friends?" Josiah wrote one word, hesitated, then added another. "More than that." 3 months had passed. Something extraordinary was blossoming in that wretched hut. A love that defied all laws, both human and societal. Abigail and Josiah developed their own language, gestures, glances, words written in the earth. She read the Bible to him at night, and he taught her about courage through his silent example. But Colonel Whitmore was watching, and he didn't like what he saw. "She's happy," he grumbled to Overseer Walker, watching from a distance as Abigail and Josiah walked together from the field. "Wasn't this supposed to be a punishment?" Walker smiled maliciously. "Do you want me to separate them, sir? I can sell Josiah to the mines in Tennessee. Nobody survives there more than 2 years. Before the colonel could answer, a voice echoed, "Dad!" Samuel Whitmore, the colonel's eldest son, who was away on a military campaign, was riding along the road. He had returned unexpectedly. As he dismounted, he noticed his father's paleness. "What's happening? Where's Abigail?" The colonel looked away. "Your sister had to learn a lesson." Samuel forced his way into the mansion, demanding explanations. When he learned what his father had done, he paled. "Father, you gave her as a wife to a slave, Abigail. She disobeyed me. She shamed our family. She's our family!" Samuel slammed his fist on the table. "And Josiah, Dad, do you know who he really is?" The colonel frowned. "A mute and rebellious slave." "No." Samuel pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "During my campaign in the North, I met a pastor named Josiah Turner, an elderly, freed black man. He showed me this. It was a birth certificate. Josiah Turner, Jr. He'd born free in Maryland, son of Josiah Turner, Sr. and Sarah, kidnapped at age 8 and illegally sold into slavery. Josiah is not legally anyone's property, Father. He is a free man who was criminally enslaved. And there's more." Samuel took a deep breath. "The pastor is coming here, with lawyers and with federal law." The colonel slumped into his chair. If this became public, he would be ruined, not just socially, but legally. Keeping a free man in slavery was a serious federal crime. "We have to release him," Samuel insisted, "now, before it's too late." But the news had already spread. That night, a group of neighboring farmers arrived at the farm, furious. "If you free that black man, Whitmore, all our slaves will want the same. It will destabilize everything." The colonel was cornered. Releasing Josiah meant admitting his crime. Not releasing him meant facing federal law. And in the middle of it all was his daughter. In the slave quarters, Josiah frantically wrote on the ground, while Abigail read what he said, tears streaming down her face. He had discovered the truth through whispers among the slaves who had overheard the conversation in the mansion. "You are free, Josiah. You always have been. You can leave." He erased everything and wrote in firm letters, "Not without you." Dawn brought more than light. It brought a procession. 3 carriages stopped before the Whitmore mansion. From the first vehicle descended an elderly black man with white hair, dressed in shepherd's garb. His eyes scanned the property until they settled upon the slave quarters. "My son is here," Josiah Turner Sr. said in a firm voice, "and I came to get him." He was accompanied by 2 lawyers from Boston and a federal marshal. Colonel Whitmore emerged from the mansion, his face pale. Beside him, Samuel attempted to mediate. "Pastor Turner," the colonel began, "there's a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding whatsoever." The pastor opened an envelope containing documents. "My son, Josiah Turner, Jr., born free in 1832 in Maryland, was kidnapped in 1840 and sold illegally. I've spent 17 years searching for him. 2 months ago, a freed slave who passed by your farm told me there was a mute man here with a specific scar on his right shoulder." His voice trembled. "The same birthmark my son had." The marshal stepped forward. "Colonel Whitmore, Under the Federal Act of 1850, keeping a free citizen in slavery is a crime punishable by imprisonment and forfeiture of property. Bring Josiah Turner Jr. here immediately. Meanwhile, in the slave quarters, chaos reigned. Neighboring farmers had arrived during the night, armed, determined to prevent Josiah from being freed. "This is a dangerous precedent," one of them shouted. "If a black man can prove he's free, everyone will try." Abigail and Josiah were barricaded inside the cabin. She held a kitchen knife in trembling hands. "They won't take you, Josiah. I won't allow it." He gently took her hand, removing the knife. He wrote on the wall with charcoal, "I don't want you to get hurt because of me." "Josiah, you don't understand." She held his face. "I love you. You taught me what true faith and true courage are. I won't let you face this alone." He touched her forehead with his, closing his eyes. Then he quickly wrote, "I love you too. That's why you need to survive. Tell our story." An explosion of shouts outside. The federal marshal was confronting the farmers. "Get out of the way, or you'll be arrested for obstruction of justice." Suddenly, the cabin door was burst open. But it wasn't the farmers. It was Samuel, panting. "Abigail! Josiah! Come, now!" He led them along a hidden path between the cabins, avoiding the armed groups. Ahead, Pastor Turner waited, supported by federal soldiers whom Samuel had secretly summoned. When Josiah saw the old man, his whole body trembled. The shepherd opened his arms, tears streaming down his face. "My son! My precious son!" Josiah ran. Father and son embraced, 17 years of separation, crumbling in silent sobs from one and anguished groans from the other. The pastor caressed his son's face, touched the scar on his throat, wept for the pain he could not prevent. "I never stopped searching," the pastor whispered. "I never gave up. God promised me I would find you." Abigail watched, her own heart broken and restored at the same time. Samuel touched her shoulder. "Sister, there's something more." He handed her another document, a letter from the governor of Massachusetts, offering asylum. "You can go with them. You can be free too." But before she could answer, gunshots rang out. The ranchers had opened fire on the federal soldiers. Chaos erupted. Slaves ran for cover. Women screamed. Men clashed. Colonel Whitmore stood in the middle, paralyzed, watching his world crumble. "Father!" Abigail ran to him, even as Josiah tried to hold her back. "Father, stop this! Stop before more people die!" The colonel stared at her, truly seeing his daughter for the first time in months. She was thin, bruised, weathered by the sun, but her eyes shone with a strength he had never seen before. "Abigail, I forgive you, Dad," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Despite everything, I forgive you, but you need to do the right thing now." Samuel joined her. "Dad, Abigail is right. You can end this. You still have a choice." The colonel looked around, at the violence, at the pastor holding his recovered son, at the waiting marshal. Then, slowly, he raised his hands. "Stop! Everyone stop!" Silence gradually settled. The colonel walked to the center, his voice cracked. "Josiah Turner Jr. is a free man. He always has been. I committed a terrible crime." Each word was agony. "He's free to go, with my apologies." The farmers protested, but the federal soldiers restrained them. The marshal nodded. "Wise words, Colonel, though late." Pastor Turner approached, Josiah beside him. He extended his hand to the colonel. "I forgive you too. Bitterness only perpetuates the cycle. Christ taught us otherwise." The colonel couldn't accept the handshake. The shame was too great. But Josiah, surprisingly, stepped forward. He quickly wrote on a piece of paper Samuel had given him, "I too forgive, but I will never forget." Then Josiah turned to Abigail. The shepherd observed, understanding. "You love her, don't you, my son?" Josiah nodded, his eyes fixed on Abigail. The shepherd smiled through his tears. "Then she'll come with us, if she wants to." Abigail looked back, to the mansion where she had grown up, to the father who had rejected her, to Samuel who had always supported her. Then she looked at Josiah, the man who had taught her about true faith, true love, true courage. "I want to," she said firmly. "I will." Samuel hugged his sister. "Write to me. Promise." "I promise. And Samuel, take care of him." She looked at her father, who was walking away defeated. "He needs redemption more than any of us." 3 years later, a small church in Boston was packed. Josiah Turner Jr., whose throat had now been surgically treated by doctors from the north. He still couldn't speak perfectly, but he could make sounds, whisper words, stood before the congregation alongside his father. Abigail, now officially Abigail Turner, sat in the front row, a small child on her lap. 2-year-old Sarah, named after the grandmother she never knew. Next to her was Samuel, who had left the farm and now worked for the abolitionist cause. Josiah read a sermon he had written, his voice hoarse but clear. "God brought me out of darkness into the light, not just physically, but spiritually." He looked at Abigail. Through the love of a courageous woman who risked everything to live her faith, not just preach. The congregation, a mix of free blacks and white abolitionists, listened in respectful silence. Pastor Turner, now elderly but radiant, watched his son with pride. "Our story isn't just about punishment or redemption," Josiah continued. "It's about how God transforms tragedy into purpose. My forced silence taught me to hear God in ways I never would have learned." After the service, a letter arrived. It was from Colonel Whitmore. Samuel read it aloud. "Dear Abigail and Josiah, I freed all the slaves on the farm. The property was sold. I'm using the money to fund schools for black children. It's not enough. It will never be enough to undo what I did. But it's a start. Your father, who doesn't deserve to be called that, Thomas Whitmore." Josiah placed his hand on Abigail's. He whispered with difficulty, "There is hope for everyone." Abigail smiled through her tears, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Yes, there is always hope, because love, true love, always wins." Outside the church, the sun set over Boston, casting golden light on a city, a country that was slowly, painfully moving toward change. And in that small family, born from the deepest suffering, shone a light that no darkness could extinguish. The story of Josiah and Abigail reminds us that even in the darkest circumstances, faith, love, and courage can transform lives. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories of faith, hope, and redemption that change the course of history. Your subscription helps us continue sharing these powerful narratives that inspire and transform.